Welcome to Whispers from Within. I'm your host, Katja Aurora, intuitive healer, space holder, and inner wisdom guide, here to share insights from a lifetime of walking between worlds. This is the sacred space where intuition leads, the soul speaks, and ancient wisdom meets everyday life. In each episode, we explore energy, healing, and the human experience, guided by presence, truth, and laughter. Let's listen in and remember who we really are. I stand in the light of truth and love, whole, sovereign, and free. Only what serves the highest good may enter this space. All else dissolves into light. Every word, sound, and silence shared here is carried in clarity, purity, and love. May each listener receive exactly what serves their highest evolution in perfect timing and perfect resonance. The field is sealed, protected, and blessed, and so it is. Welcome, everyone. Today I am going to speak about meeting fear with compassion. This is another theme that's quite dear to my heart, and I'm going to share some history, my own history with you again today. And before we start, let's just settle in here with a nice deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just settling in your own system. Let's maybe repeat that one more time. Breathing in through the nose and releasing anything that's not serving you in this moment. Welcome. The first question I have for you in this theme is, what if fear is not something to overcome, but something to meet with compassion? So today I will explore the pathways from fear to compassion, from judgment to integrity, from denial to truth. And to begin with, I am just gonna share a little bit about me and my journey from dishonesty to integrity. I have started out my journey being fearful of not belonging, of rejection, and with a fear of not being good enough. And I think most of us have a form of this fear of not being good enough in some shape or form. It's very common. And so my mechanism to handle these fears as a child, and very young child actually, that was in kindergarten, and I remember this really vividly. That's where it all started. I handled this with dishonesty. So I lied in order to belong, in order to be included, in order to just, be more than enough. I made myself better with lying than I actually was. I was fearful of not being good enough as I was, because I've told you before, I always felt very dull, and when I look at pictures of myself, I was dull. That was all purposefully so. And I deep down I knew this, but still, obviously, you want to belong and you want to take part in everything. But I then created stories as protection, as a way of getting in where I otherwise wouldn't have. And one of those examples is a school trip that I had. And I want to tell you the story briefly because it just highlights how this all played out. And just out of integrity now, I just feel it's time to share this story. So in my teens, I don't exactly know how old I was, but it was probably between 14, 14 and 15 years old, something like that. We went on a school trip, and before this school trip, I had lied in the group of the girls in my class that I already had my period. So not many at the time had their period in my class. And so by me saying that I already had my period, that I already know everything about it, which I did know a lot about it. I don't know how, but I did know a lot about it. So I lied that I already had it and I gave advice to the girls in my class. And it happened that we went on a school trip. And on that school trip, I was prepared. I had taken stuff with me because you never know. And I also had kind of planned to pretend that I had my period on that school trip. So I took things with me, ready. And as it happened, on that school trip, I actually got my period for the very first time. So I manifested through my lying because I lied very cleverly by believing my own lie. I knew that I could only be, um, uh, they would only believe me if I truly believed my own lie. So I did believe my own lie. And with that believing and really fully being in it and living it, I manifested my period. So I got my period on that journey. And sorry for the men listening in here. I just, this is just the level of which I went through to actually belong and to, yeah, just be somebody when I was a nobody. And so yeah, I got my period on that school trip, and it was I think a school trip of 4 or 5 days. And as it often happens when you get your first period, it stops and then it starts again. And I didn't know this. This was something that was new to me. So I thought it had finished, and then it hadn't finished, and I bled again. And I had a bit of a mishap there with that. But I also was able to navigate my way out of that again, explaining it in a very clever way. Just that is the whole story of how it actually happened, that my lie, instead of being found out, it actually manifested. I manifested my own lie, and it became reality. It's very funny when I look back on that now, but um, at the time, um, I was just really chuffed with how perfect the universe had orchestrated that one. So, so in my case, dishonesty looked a little bit like manipulation, but it was actually a protection mechanism and a survival strategy for me because it meant that I was interesting for once because I already had something that the other girls were kind of waiting for. It was a novelty to have your period, even if obviously when you're a woman, you don't want to have your period, or there is a time when you don't want to have your period because it's not the nicest thing to have, or that's what we are told as women. So it was a novelty to have your period, and that's what I played at. And it worked. It totally worked. But now I'm being honest and I'm saying that I didn't have my period when I said I had it. It just so happened then that it proved itself by manifesting it on that very school trip. Enough of that. Let's carry on. So my own behavior in the dishonesty, and in this pattern, was to a degree also inherited from my parents and grandparents because I lived in Eastern Germany and honesty there wasn't always safe. So dishonesty and judgment were survival strategies that were the norm in Eastern Germany. So what it was always in my field subconsciously, and so that was playing into it as well. So what I'm getting at here is that sometimes when we have fears, we carry something that is older than us. So it might not be our own fear. It might be something to do with our lineage that we have taken on, that then needs to also be looked at because it plays out in our subconscious. Or it could be patterns that we have learned as conditioning. So they're not stemming from personal failures, they're actually coming from the conditioning that we are exposed to in early life. And for me, that was certainly this environment where certain things were not spoken about, certain things were not said, but they were thought of. And I could feel the dissonance between the thinking and the speaking. And I couldn't quite place it at that time. But I always knew there was something not quite right. And so I took that on, that was normal. I did the same thing. And now we are coming to judgment. Judgment is a big one. So I want to speak to you about the nature of judgment. First of all, through my own lived experience. So I had an instinctual sensitivity to imperfections because my parents lived judgment to the T. They were very judgmental from very early on because judgment made them feel better than the others. So when they could judge somebody else, they felt better in themselves. And so that made me very sensitive to imperfections, full stop. So when anything wasn't quite right, I was aware of it because I was immediately then subconsciously thinking of what would my parents say to that, right? It also made me worry. It made me complain. It made me obsess over details, which I have in my human design and everywhere anyway. And it also made me have this need to be right. And this is something else that I've taken on from my ancestral line because my dad's family have a thread, and I think this is common in German lineages generally, that there is a need to be right and making others wrong at the same time. That was my lived experience. Now, the deeper truth here is that judgment often comes from being judged very early on. So again, it's a societal programming that happens. It's not innate. Judgment is not something that we are born with. As souls, we don't judge. But as we come into this human experience, everything is suddenly judged. And that's what we are then taking on. So the key insight here is that judgment is a projection outwards to something that is asking to be healed within us. So there's judgment always arrives as a consequence of something within you that needs healing. And once you look at that within you, you can actually free yourself from the judgmental projection that you hold. The cost of judgment is that it, in essence, blocks the opportunity for growth and healthy change because you're continuously projecting outwards. You're not looking at yourself. When you're judging, you're looking outside. Sometimes we judge ourselves, and that can be also something really triggering. When we're judging ourselves, we're really harsh critics to ourselves, often to better ourselves. That judgment that we take on and judge ourselves with is only learned from judgment that we took on through conditioning very early on in life. So again, it's linked to this judgmental environment that we're born into. And judgment always in itself creates disempowerment because we push away what wants to be recognized and transformed within what we actually have the power to transform in ourselves. And there is this collective layer of programming that I've already touched on that everybody, this is just a common thing that it happens everywhere, that we push away and literally relinquish the responsibility for it if we judge another, right? We're pushing it away, we're pushing it out. And therefore, we also give our power away of being able to ever change it in us, right? Often when we judge something outside of us, it has something to do with our own judgment of us internally. It's often what we judge in others that we judge of ourselves. It might also be the opposite there. So it's not always like um, a mirror that is direct. It can also be an indirect mirror. But this pattern of projection outwardly is socially reinforced. So it's very difficult to see it in the first place and to then take ownership of it, because we have learned, and it's continuously reinforced, that judgment is a good thing. But judgment is what you do. And then there's another piece to this, which is really interesting for me, that I come across often in my practice with my clients as well, because I have that in me. So there's a resonance to that, which is denial. And I call denial the hidden protector, because it is the most subtle defense mechanism that there is. And it's also a defense mechanism that it's very hard to see that you have it at the beginning. Yeah, it's a very sneaky one, that if you are not aware of your denial, you will deny that you have it. And I want to take you back to another story, uh, how I found out that I was carrying denial in my own system, because that was not easy to find in me as well. So I know what it feels like to be found out. And for me, this moment of recognition happened in magic school. So in 2015, I had a container that I entered with a lot of women. I think we were over 20 women in this container. And this container was a program of 9 months together. And we had sessions each week, at least 2 sessions each week. And they were both 2.5 hours long, I think. So it was really intense, really, really deep. And as part of that, I had sessions that were witnessed by the group with the facilitator. So the facilitator would do a session with me, a deep dive session with me, and it was witnessed by all of the other women in the container. And as she was having a session with me, she very craftfully and gently pointed out that I was denying something. And I can't remember exactly what I was denying at that point. I only remember the denial. And as she was pointing this out to me, my immediate response to that was, oh no, I don't have that. So I was denying my denial. And this is the tricky thing with denial, because you do deny that initially because you don't want to have it, right? So it's a really tricky one to actually acknowledge within you. But once you do, once you allow that to be a possibility in your field, then you've got it. And then you know that you've got it and you can actually take ownership of it. So I didn't see my own pattern of denial up until that point. And that was in 2015. I was 35 then. So yeah, it took me a while to find out that I was denying some things about myself. And I don't remember what I denied. That is out of my memory now. But I do remember the feeling of having been found out. That feeling of having been found out, and that I could no longer hide, because she was laser sharp in her picking up on what was going on in me. And so there was no hiding place for me anymore. I had to see, I was pointed at this denial in me. There was nowhere else to go. So I could not get away with denying my denial. I did that initially, but she was gently pointing it out that it was there. And I could not, but at the end of the session, really take ownership of this denial in myself. Cracked me open, completely cracked me open. And it was so craftfully done that when I come across denial in my clients now, I can totally see that it's there because I had the same, and I can also, with the same craftsmanship, um, kind of gently nudge the person towards seeing that denial in themselves. And often there is a denial of the denial because that's what we do. That's how it happens. And I always now tell the story because I've had it myself. I know what it feels like. So it's not something that is a mistake. It happens for a reason. It's a protection mechanism. So it takes gentle and skillful navigation to actually point this out as a pattern in somebody. And the facilitator, thankfully, in magic school, did have that. And it changed my world. It completely changed me from that moment on. Because from that moment on, I was aware of my denial. And every time that I had something going on, I was looking for that. I was looking for, did I deny anything in this situation? So not only the very first denial that came out in that particular session, which I don't remember now, but every time afterwards, I, I was skillful enough then to take this on and check, do I actually deny something there? Is there something hidden there that I deny about myself? So I've learned to navigate this on my own through this being found out. And so the insight here is that denial protects us until we are ready to see the truth. And for me, that was at age 35, and it's never too late. It's never too late. So I encourage you to check. Maybe you have that as well somewhere in your system. And if you do, you can welcome it with open arms. It is only there to protect you. But it also keeps yourself stuck in patterns that might want to be transformed. Moving on. Now we're getting to the part of meeting the fear with compassion. So my turning point came when I noticed that I had deeper fears, like the fear of being ordinary or boring and therefore not belonging. This was one of my fears. It was very subtle and very subconscious until I found it. And I also had a fear of not being good enough, which is very common, as I've already said. What shifted when I found out that I denied certain aspects of myself, that I pushed away and outwards and judged others of the things that I had in me, I was then able to meet my inner children, the aspects of me that were edged in my subconscious because they needed to be seen. And so this is the inner child work that we often do in sessions as well. So I had to meet my inner children and those fearful aspects within me, um, and offer them love and attention instead of correcting them in order to heal them. So beforehand, I was always judging and correcting. And now I was able to actually meet them with love and attention and compassion. And this began that healing journey. So this led to a greater freedom and a higher viewpoint in myself because I could suddenly see what game I had played up until that point. And it is a game that we play, right? We don't have to take it too seriously. It can be very serious if we're in the human experience of it. But in hindsight, and when I look back on it, it was only there to protect me. And once I was ready to see these places in me, and I have to say, I'm not a very fearful person. That was always very subconscious. It was very hidden to me and my awareness that I even carried fears. I was on the outside, I was always quite courageous. But there were always fears underneath. And so when I look deeper, and this is where the denial comes in again, when I look deeper, I found those pieces of fear that I hadn't known about myself because I was courageous enough then to turn the light on in me Rather than pointing things out that were imperfect in others, I could actually turn this around and looked at myself and could find those underlying fears that I had tried to um, hide through the judgment of others, right? Because when you judge others, you take the light elsewhere. You distract people from yourself towards another. That's the other strategy there. So I was finally able to shine the light on myself rather than having to continue to judge others in the same way. So compassion for my own hurt parts and fearful parts and inner children became the bridge. And in that compassion, there's a very important aspect, which is forgiveness. So we have to learn to forgive that we ever did it any other way. We have to learn to forgive ourselves, to judge ourselves and others. And we also have to learn to forgive our ancestors, where we might carry these patterns from. They might have imparted those things or the fears or the patterns onto us, but only because they couldn't heal them themselves. So ancestral stuff is always imparted to the next generation until such time that there's somebody breaking that pattern, breaking this carrying on of the same pattern. Right? It has to be somebody in the family that is that one that stops the pattern from repeating itself. And I was that one in this moment where I had to see that that was ancestral as well as individual, because there were individual parts of me in there too. But there was a lot of ancestral stuff that I could then forgive my ancestors to impart on me, knowing that I had chosen to be the one that released it. I couldn't have done that if they didn't impart it on me. So it was all done in perfect alignment. And then also, we can learn to forgive those that we took things on from. And that might be not just our family, but societal, like friends, yeah, and any acquaintances and anything else. But so what I invite you to do here is have a shift of perspective, because we are all shaped by our wounds and traumas, by our conditioning and survival patterns, which means that we are all similar in judging each other and with our own inner critics, which is often the most critical of all. So we are so critical towards ourselves. And if somebody is really judgmental, full stop, towards others, you can definitely tell that they're very judgmental towards themselves as well. They wouldn't be that judgmental to others if they didn't carry that within themselves. So they treat others as they do themselves. So you can have compassion. You can have compassion with that person because you can see they're clearly very harsh to themselves and haven't yet learned to love themselves enough and have compassion with themselves. So for me, becoming aware of my underlying fear of ordinariness and not being enough helped me develop compassion for my own judgmental mind and eventually have compassion for others' judgments as well, for others judging me and judging others. I could see why they were doing that and why I was doing that. So that compassion grew over time. So there's a gift in this, right? My evolved gift was that I could see key details that make up any dilemma or situation in others through seeing my own denial. It unlocked a very deep ability to see things in others that I now use in the work that I do with my clients. So I'm only able to see as clearly into others because I have managed to see clearly into myself. And I'm not saying here that I'm finished. I'm not a finished product. I am still very much evolving in my own path and my own personal evolution, that doesn't stop. And it's important that it doesn't stop, because you don't want to get stuck in a place somewhere. You want to evolve. So there's always more to learn, always more to uncover, always more to evolve into, right? So, but through this knowing that I was denying things, and I was judgmental, if I turned this around, I could then see this in others clearly too. And that was a huge shift for me as well. So I could perceive now, I could perceive core truths that I can mirror to my clients now. And this is the gift that happened from magic school, which I will always be grateful for. So what once showed up as judgment became discernment. So I no longer judged. I no longer projected out. I discerned. I could see why. I could see the trauma and the pattern, and so could help people to see it in themselves. And this is what I do to this day. And this is where it comes from, because I was deeply honest. I learned to be deeply honest with myself. And I'm not saying again that I'm perfect in that either yet. I'm still working through this. But the more honest I can be with myself, the more I can see in others as well. And now I'm getting to this other part of this, where I became more honest with myself. That then meant that I was getting more and more integral. I was becoming more in integrity, as integrity became a living practice for me, so to speak. And integrity is the ability to uphold high standards, values, and principles with a warm heart. So it's without judgment. Integrity is living your truth so that everybody can see it. You're not hiding anything. So there's a level of transparency in it as well. It includes stark honesty, living your truth, free from the reactive, judgmental mind. And the more you can do this, the more you get to a place where what you are living and how you're living feels right. It just has a feeling of being right. And it feels like you. And this is the place where you touch on your essence, where you get to know yourself enough to know what it feels like to be yourself. And this is then the reference point that you can compare with when it doesn't feel that way. So you can navigate, and this is what happened to me, you can then navigate when it feels off and when it feels right. So living in integrity means that you're following this feeling of right in yourself, like the rightness in yourself. That's what you're following. And it doesn't have an agenda. Purely just feels good. And it's your essence. It's effortless. It's not tending anything. It's not putting on any persona. It's purely the truth. So it's effortless. It's the essence of you. And it feels right. And there is a pull towards that, because it's so delicious to feel right that you want more of that as you've tasted it once. This is my experience of it. So the more you let go of dishonesty, the more into integrity you become honesty in yourself. You're feeling this right feeling in yourself. It almost becomes pull that you want to have always. So anything else doesn't feel good anymore. So lying doesn't feel good. Withholding doesn't feel good. Anything that's not truthful doesn't feel good because it's not right. And there's no need to be right. This is not what I mean, right? There's no need to be right. It's a yearning to be truthful And in integrity, because it feels so good in you that you do it, that this is the place that you do it from. So you're not trying to be anything. You're just being it, right? And this is a delicious place to get to. So this this the truth of integrity, it seeks to release the unnecessary conditioning and the fear beneath, so that um that it's not stemming from protection but from wholeness. That's what integrity is. It comes from this wholeness within you. When you've looked at what's in the way to get to this place where it feels right what you're doing. And once you've tasted this, believe me, once you've tasted this feeling of rightness in your life, you don't want to miss it anymore. And this is what I'm striving towards, feeling more and more right in myself. Yeah, that's the only way I can describe this. And yeah, it's just really worth getting to that place. But also knowing that whenever you deviate from that, whenever you do lie, whenever you do withhold something, or you're not in an integrity in any shape or form, any other way, you really feel it in your system and it takes you out of your center. It doesn't let you be in your essence. And that is painful. It becomes painful at a point. So for me, being in integrity is living my essence and showing myself as I am. And I'm not saying that I managed to do that 24/7, 100%. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when I do, it feels deliciously perfect in my system. And it's a beautiful state to be in. And I am striving to be there more than anything else. And I have now got this reference point of knowing when I'm in my essence, in this purity, in this integrity, it feels right. That's what I'm striving to get back to every time. And I now want to bring you into a little bit of an excursion into the gene keys, because this is what brought me to this contemplation today. The gene keys in my own profile I have, and if you haven't heard of the gene keys, please don't worry about it. This what I'm saying right now might go over your head, but that's not a problem. So the gene keys is a method of self-exploration through contemplation, and the gene keys were developed by, or channeled, shall we say, or found again, by Richard Rudd. And there's a lot in the internet about it. And it's a method to understand yourself in a different way. And for me, I have gene key number 18. This is linked to the I Ching, the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. And I have the 18 in my purpose, and it's an 18.2. It's in line 2. So every hexagram has 6 lines, and my line that is amplified in this particular gene key is the line number 2. Now I want to decipher this just very briefly, not very much, but this is one of my passions. So I wanted to weave this in here and take the opportunity to tell you about it. So 18 is the path. This is the gene key with the path of judgment into integrity, into perfection. And everything that I've just told you is completely in alignment with that. Do you notice? So in my purpose, this is my purpose sphere. My gene key in my purpose is in the shadow of judgment, going into the gift of integrity, going into the siddhi, the transcended state of perfection. And it's coupled with line 2, which is the line of denial. So it is so perfect, which is why I had to mention it here, because it fits so fundamentally into this contemplation, right? So I grew up with judgment. That was the shadow, and I still have that. So I still judge now and then, and I have to notice that when I do, to then come into the rightness, into this integrity feeling, which is the gift that I discovered. And then it feels perfect. Then it feels perfect in me. It has this perfection, and there is no perfection in life. It's always perfectly imperfect, right? But it does feel perfect when you are in integrity. So I love this, that it fits so well. And then there's something else that I wanted to mention here. Another gene key that I have in my profile. I have it twice in my profile, which is the gene key number 59, which is in my Pearl sequence. This is another sequence of the gene keys. Don't worry about it. I'm just mentioning it for those of you that know the gene keys a little bit better. And the 59 is the pathway of dishonesty in the shadow into the gift of intimacy, into the transcendence, the city of transparency. Excuse me. Ah, my throat chakra is activated right now, which is no coincidence. It's perfect. So yeah, I lived dishonesty as a shadow frequency, and I needed to because it's in my gene keys. It's the path that I had to go on in order to know what it feels like to be dishonest, to then go and notice that dishonesty is never bringing me connections, is never creating lasting connections. When you lie and build a relationship on lies, you can never be intimate because you are not truthful. And that at some point comes out. And then you're no longer in a good relationship with that person or those people. So I had to learn that intimacy only comes when I'm in integrity. So these two gene keys are really linked with each other. Through my integrity, I come to the gift of intimacy as well. I can be intimate because I no longer have to hide myself when I'm in integrity. And then that leads me to be transparent. I don't have to hide anything about myself. I don't have to be dishonest about anything about myself because that would only create false relationships and would be very difficult to do. It is effort to be dishonest because you have to uphold it and you have to be careful what you're saying and you have to just play that role, right? Whereas when you are in integrity and in transparency, you don't have to hide anything. There's nothing to hide from. There's nothing to hold back. It is just your essence. It's pure. And it is not to do anything to do with effort. It becomes simple and easy. And yeah, so that was my little excursion to the gene keys, which I found so fascinating. But this is how this whole theme of meeting fear with compassion evolved in my own life. And that's why I wanted to share it with you here. So there is a liberation of truth in this. Integrity is always linked to our throat chakra, which means lies create contraction in the throat. It can create blockages in the throat, whereas truth creates flow. So truth allows you to have an open and healthy throat chakra. It's very linked to that. And in my lived experience, I have reached a level of inner peace through honesty because I don't have to hide. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to um, play a role anymore or have to be careful with what I'm saying. I can just be me. And when I know that I'm doing my best, which is also being in integrity, right? I'm doing my best in everything I do. That is my form of perfection. I can't do any more than that. And that's an integrity. So the deeper reflection here is that knowing at the same time that my imperfection is part of the greater plan and perfection of the universe as well as is yours, by the way, right? That even challenges and suffering are part of nature's inherent perfection. So the imperfection that we have, that we are, is always wanted. It's a part of the whole and it has its purpose. But that doesn't mean that we cannot improve and that we can evolve, right? We can totally do that. So at the end of this, I would like to invite you to gentle self inquiry. So next time when you notice that you judge someone, ask yourself, why are you judging? Are you judging to feel superior? Or are you judging to hide a deeper insecurity? Are you denying something about yourself? Where are you collapsing into fear? Where is fear prevalent in your system? And where are you acting out as projection and judgment so that you don't have to feel your own fear underneath? And as you inquire that in yourself, I also invite you to keep a level of curiosity, not criticism. Don't criticize yourself when you find that out in yourself, but actually keep being curious about it. Keep asking questions about it because that will keep you and your system open to see where healing wants to happen. So approach those patterns with a sense of curiosity instead of shame. Don't shame yourself. There's a reason for everything, right? And sometimes you might not be able to see things properly because it's a blind spot. Blind spots are created out of protection again. And blind spots, what I mean by that, it's things that you have purposefully put into your subconscious mind so that you don't have to be conscious about them anymore. But that also makes them very hard to be seen. So sometimes you need another person. You can't see these things alone. Sometimes you need another person to point these out to you so that you can see, like the denial, for example. That can be a blind spot. But once you see it, you cannot unsee it again. So, it only takes that finding out and then you can work with that yourself. So, yeah, the invitation here is as well that it can be helpful to have another person look at it with you if you get stuck at any point. So we're not islands, right? We are here to help each other. So when that is the case for you, if you get stuck somewhere, don't be too proud to ask another person to look at it with you so that you can find those blind spots and evolve. You evolve every time you discover something, you unravel something, you uncover something that is in you. You have another place where you can heal, and that makes you whole, a little bit more whole, a little bit more in integrity. And that's where we want to get to. My final message here is that fear softens in the presence of compassion. So if we can find a place in us where we can have compassion with the fear that we are holding, or others are holding, or the judgment that others are holding, knowing that it always comes as a protection mechanism, then integrity is not something that we achieve. It is something that we return to underneath the layers of judgment and denial, right? So we excavate to a place of integrity where we are living from the essence rather than the trauma or the unhealed places in ourselves. And with that, I invite you to take another few breaths with me. And this one is what I call the emergency breath. This is a good one to remember when you are ever in a panic or when you see another person being in a panic. You can use this breath. So I hope this will be of service to you going forward. You might remember this. Called the emergency breath. And it goes like this. You breathe in through the nose and you breathe out with 3 puffs through the mouth, like this. Breathing in through the nose and then breathing out through the mouth 3 times. Let's do this again. Breathing in through the nose Breathing out through the mouth 3 times. And one more. Breathing in and out. Now this breath has a very grounding character, and it also brings you right back into your center. It helps with integration and softness. This is why I wanted to put this at the end here. And I leave you with this statement. Perhaps the moment we stop trying to be perfect is the moment we begin to feel whole. I see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me on this journey inwards. May the whispers you heard today echo into your daily life, gently guiding, healing, and reminding you of who you truly are. If this episode stirred something in your heart, I invite you to follow, share, or leave a review. It helps the medicine reach those who need it most. And if you feel called to go deeper, connect with me. Until next time, stay rooted, stay open, and keep listening to the whispers from within.